Good evening. How are you?
Not too bad. When you keep your forwarding on, what happens is it ends up you call me and then you get control of the call, and
Okay.
I can't add anybody. So can you kill the forwarding and let me
Yeah,
recall you?
give me 30 seconds.
Hey, no problem. Thanks. All right. So anyway, so area code 702-605-4277. It is really kind of freaking me out just how much Pete Santilli getting arrested has spooked everybody. They're all afraid to talk. I'm having a hard time getting somebody to live stream at the federal prison tomorrow in LA. I mean, everybody's scared. I mean, apparently it worked. It freaking worked. They went out and killed a man in cold blood and put the rest of them in solitary confinement, and it worked. Everybody's spooked. Everybody's scared to death to open their mouth or go out there and be press. It's kind of freaking freaky. Let's try to get Deacon here again.
Good evening.
All right, there you are. Good evening.
What's the topic for this evening?
Oh, I'm just talking about constitutional freedoms, the loss of freedom, just all this kind of stuff that we've been looking at for months. Just all that stuff. It's become rather frightening when you look at the everybody's afraid to open their mouth now.
Yeah, that's true. I've never been afraid to open my mouth, so.
Well, this Pete Santilli being in jail for being press, he was activist press. So, I don't know if there's a definition that can be taken there. I mean, you're a lawyer. Is there a legal definition that can make the difference there for those guys?
Well, yeah, what I've read is he didn't have some kind of credentials they recognized as far as the press goes, and so they just treated him as like one of the occupiers.
Right.
And I'm not sure what kind of credentials you have to be considered officially the press, but the problem those people had up there is they showed up on public land, whether it's federal or state, that's an argument, but with firearms and refused to leave. I mean, you just can't do shit like that. So.
Well,
I mean that was kind of stupid,
Well, I mean, that can all be debated in a whole bunch of ways, but it's really not illegal to carry firearms in Oregon. I mean, if this had been in downtown, New Jersey somewhere, might have made a difference. Might have been on that train. You see what I'm saying? I mean, there's just. And basically their initial charges, and I looked up the charges, it was basically impeding. And it kind of it's kind of the same thing, the original impeding charge. They've added a whole bunch of charges now. But, the initial charge was impeding, which is kind of like not pulling over for an ambulance.
Yeah, I mean, I read the indictment and stuff like that in the charging document. It seemed pretty thin to me. It sounded like because you gave us a hard time, we want to throw you in jail type of thing. It's not. It doesn't really allege any kind of like major laws that have been broken. It's kind of like I am a federal officer, and because you're giving me a hard time, I'm throwing you in prison type of thing. I thought it was kind of bullshit myself, but.
Right. Okay. Well, so now we got your opinion rebalanced because, believe me, what you said first made you know how that was going to be accepted.
Well, no, I mean, I just think that they could have used their head in a different way to get their point across. I think it was not the best strategy they used. But having said that, it sounds like it's sort of an abusive situation with the government. I mean, if you're going to arrest somebody, make sure they break some kind of law, not the fact that you don't like the fact that they're showing up and protesting and stuff, and you're impeding you as a federal officer. That's kind of a bullshit charge.
Yeah, and when you really look at it, and that state was the wrong place for those guys to do this. Yeah. They have no bond system up there.
Didn't know that.
You can't bond out of jail.
Their state court system, you mean?
You can't bond out of jail, period. You can't bail yourself out of jail. It's all up to the judge. It's like I think it's the only state that still holds that draconian law.
Well, I read that affidavit by that female FBI officer, and it's like, well, you tried to intimidate me in the shop in the grocery store, some stupid stuff like that. I mean, it's pretty thin, but the problem they have is they're in the federal system now, and it's really difficult to get any kind of relief from that. And
right, and when you really think about it, the court only services the system, right?
Well, I mean, my philosophical position as far as that goes is, look, the judges and lawyers, they're part of the system. Okay, they're going to protect the system. They're going to side with the system. They're going to side with political power. Politicians put judges in office, and they know where the line is, and they're going to serve the system because they're kind of brainwashed. That's kind of what they were taught, and they owe something, their money, their retirement, their job, their position to the system. So they're going to have their brain's going to be wired to protect the system.
Right. Yeah, I was watching some stuff today, Deacon. We're friends, and I'm not trying to back you into any kind of corner just with these questions, but I was watching this video today with this dude somewhere in New Jersey, and he was going on and on. And he was talking about, the bar and the word esquire and all that, that as a lawyer, once you become barred or esquire, it has something to do with the British courts. Is that true?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, when I got licensed, I didn't have any kind of any ceremony or information as far as that's concerned. That's probably where it came from, but those are just terms. The bar is just a term for people who are licensed to practice law. That's all it is. It's just, I guess, synonym or noun or collective noun. I mean, ESQ is something that you put after your name that designates someone as an attorney. That's all. Right. I mean, it's not some kind of secret hidden meeting or anything like that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out, because everybody, somebody says, bar, that kind of, the first letter stands for British something or another. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
Well, that might be true, and that's maybe where the name came from, and it kind of stuck. But like the bar is just like the Columbus Bar Association. I'm a member of it. The Ohio State Bar Association. I'm a member of it. I am a member of the bar. That just means I'm an attorney. That's all it means. It doesn't mean I'm some kind of secret society or some kind of special paperwork.
Right. Well, I didn't think you were. Okay, so is there a difference? You're a great person to interview in this question, because, I mean, is there a difference between one attorney? We hear about civil rights attorneys and constitutional attorneys. Is there some kind of difference involved there?
No. What happens is when you have to become licensed to practice law in all 50 jurisdictions, you have to go to an ABA, American Bar Association accredited law school. You have to get a law degree. You have to pass a background check and a character check, morality or character examination. And then if you get the degree and you pass that, then you can sit for the bar exam, which is, like a test, a 3-day test. And as part of that test, you have to know, like, criminal law, constitutional law, civil law, property law, on and on, business law, to get your license. And if you get a minimum score, then you get your license. So there's no distinction as to what type of civil law or constitutional law. Now, people specialize, like, someone who does divorces is a domestic attorney, or someone who does, like, decedents estates when people die, they're a probate attorney, and someone who wants to specialize in constitutional law or civil rights would call themselves that type of attorney. But for anybody to get licensed, they have to have a minimum knowledge of all those areas to pass the bar exam.
And that, as I understand it, I know a couple guys trying to pass the bar and they can't seem to get through it. That is not exactly a numpty test to get through, is it?
No, it's you have to memorize stacks upon stacks of books, and you have to be able to analyze legal facts and apply them to the law and come out with a conclusion. So really what a lawyer does is it's kind of like doing algebra, right? You take the facts of something that happened in real life, and the law is like the rule or the formula, and you have to take the facts and pass it through the formula to get a result. It's kind of that way, and that's kind of what you need to do when you pass the bar exam is you have to take the law that you memorized, and they give you a fact pattern, and you have to discern what's relevant as opposed to what's not relevant in the fact pattern, and you have to apply it to the rule or the law, and you have to come up with a conclusion saying this party wins because of X, Y, and Z, or they don't win because they didn't do A, B, and C, or it's most likely that a court would rule this way because this is what the law says, or there might be a few facts that are in dispute that can go either way, and so that's what they want to see. They want to see the legal reasoning and that type of thing.
Right. Okay. So, the next question we have is we're looking at a lot of strange things going on within our government and the system, etc. And the word precedent constantly comes up because we see courts setting precedents, whether good or bad. And I know lawyers use, court cases as precedent to defend other court cases. So explain what exactly. I know, but, many of our listeners may not know. What the hell is a precedent and how does it apply to the law?
Well, there's a principle in Anglo-American law, in British and American law, which, by the way, when we formed the Constitution and ratified it, they took the British law, common law mostly, and some statutory law, and incorporated it into the Constitution because they were English at the time, even though they overthrew the king. But there's a principle in the law called stare decisis, which means that once a case has been decided, a controversy, it's like a boxing match, right? Let's say two people say they both want to own the same thing, or it's mine, or you gored my ox, or you haven't treated me fairly, or you stole from me, or that's my cornfield. And so when you have two people who are gonna slug it out, you can only have one person left standing. So once they come up with a rule of law and it's a well-tested, it's a just so-called moral rule of law, that when X, Y, and Z happens, if we're going to have an ordered civil society and people don't kill each other for blood, right, or whatever, to kill each other over a cow, then we have to have certain principles that are set in stone. And when certain things happen, this is how it's going to be decided. This is what the rule says. So, for example, if you jump over your neighbor's fence and steal their cow, well, that's not your property, and we're going to decide this in your neighbor's favor because you've done it wrong. So once they come up with these rules in different areas of law, and it's a solid principle that's stood the test of time, and it's the way to decide a controversy, a court's not going to overrule that. They're going to say, this is the rule, this is the moral rule, this has stood the test of time, we're going to let the decision stand. So if you come into court and you have a controversy under the same or similar fact pattern, if something similar has happened by analogy, we're going to decide your case the same way, because otherwise we'd have chaos in society. So that's what a precedent is. Now, a court can modify a precedent, extend it, it can retreat from it, it can overrule it, it can overthrow it, and so it's subject to modification. But to modify as a rock solid precedent like that, you'd have to have compelling circumstances, or you'd have to have like historical changes, or government changes, or population changes, or cultural changes. For example, Roe versus Wade. Basically, the reasoning for abortion is that a woman, it's part, morally, most people would not agree with this, or religiously, but they say it's a glob of tissue in a woman's body. And until it's viable outside the fetus or outside the womb, it can live on its own. It's just a part of a woman's body, and because it's part of her body, she can do whatever she wants to do with it. And so that would be like a precedent. And so over time, that's been eroded. The Supreme Court has like chipped away at that and allowed different, states to pass laws that chip away at that type of thing. So, anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know, I know the answer. I just want the listeners to know these answers. So, me and you kind of agree that peace until it got out of line or whatever, but really, quite honestly, let's look at the facts. Pete was there, regardless of what he was doing, yelling and screaming or whatever he was doing. I don't like the dude at all, but I do support his right to free press 100%. And the fact that he is now sitting in solitary confinement, although he never carried a weapon, never threatened anybody, he just yelled a lot. Is that not? Do you not agree that is an assault on free press? Because honestly, at this point, they could come take me away because I'm doing the same thing. I'm just doing it on the internet. I'm not there yelling at everybody.
Okay, here's the thing. Here's the crux of the matter, and here's where I probably disagree with what a lot of the alternative media is saying. Okay, what you're saying is morally right. What you're saying may be legally right, but that's not what this is about. This is about politics and power, and they want to rub somebody's nose in it, like Pete Santilli. So next time Nighthawk doesn't show up with guns. I'm not saying you would do that. I'm just saying this is about power. And it's to rub.
Well, yeah, but
that's what this is about.
I'd never show up with a gun. I'd show up with a camera.
I understand that.
Right.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, it's not about the rule of law. It's not about what people think the Constitution is. And here's the thing, in my point of view, go back to 1787 when they ratified the Constitution, right? They put this stuff on a piece of paper, but those rich, wealthy white guys who owned slaves and who defeated the British Empire and the king, right, at the barrel of a gun, George Washington, they were the government. They were the Constitution. So when you say Constitution, I think people sort of mistakenly think it's a piece of paper that's been sitting for 235 or 40 years in the National Archives. It's not. It's the people who are in charge. They are the Constitution. They're the rule of law. They say what goes. Now, it's kind of hard to understand, but you have to understand it. Those were a bunch of rich people who didn't want somebody else telling them what to do, and they wanted to run their own affairs. And that's kind of what you got right now. The problem is what they believe the Constitution or the law of the government is not the same thing that we believe. That's what the problem is. And that's where you're coming to blows, so to speak, or whatever you want to call it, because they shifted the whole thing about 18th century due process rights and freedoms and the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution and due process and all that stuff. The people who are running the show don't believe that anymore. And it's evolved so far away from that, it's not the same thing. I guess the question is, how far away can we get from that and still live up to the principles and still have a so-called quote-unquote constitutional government? So if you're looking at the original Constitution and looking at the document and thinking that's what the government is, that'll never happen ever again, ever. never going to happen.
Yeah,
so, you understand what I'm saying? And I'm not endorsing what they're doing, and I agree with you, and I think that they're criminals and they're frauds, but the problem is most people don't. The conversation we're having, 95% of the population, they don't know or they don't care. They've been brainwashed. That's the problem we have.
Well, yeah, that's more than clear. I mean, it's like I was running a video the other day every time somebody did something stupid where somebody was trying to start their vacuum cleaner by pulling on the cord. And, I mean, that is really the point. And then, there's always this thing, I'm awake. All right, you're awake, but get out of freaking bed. I mean, really, come on. You're awake? Well, you can be awake and still be in the bed. Get out of the damn bed and do something. I announced I announced this roundtable earlier. You're the only one that wanted to talk. You're the only one that wanted to have a voice. And that's kind of frightening in a lot of ways, because people don't want to talk. They don't want to have a voice. They just want to sit and go, and they just want to do this. Here, hold on. They just want to do this on their keyboard. You got something to say, call in, man. I mean, we're here, and, it's like, put your money where your mouth is. Put your mouth up. Do the talk. I mean, Deacon, you've been with us here at the station almost since the freaking beginning. And anybody, and by the way, Deacon's our station lawyer. He's the only, I have over the years, several lawyers that want to get involved with the station, but I'm like, no. Deacon he's the only lawyer I have ever met in my life that I like. So, I mean, it's really ridiculous. And as all this stuff winds down, Hello? As all of this stuff winds down, out of Oregon, and stuff is winding up elsewhere, I think it is so important that we keep this in the public front, because if we don't, it will be forgotten fast. It's getting to the point, even my generation, their attention span is getting down to the Twitter 135 character level, and it's kind of freaking me out.
Well, that's on purpose. I mean, we've talked about the brainwashing with the electronic waste and stuff. I firmly believe that's true. But see, here's the thing. From my point of view, what you have to do is you have to game the system, and you have to cheat them back just the way they've cheated us. Okay, they're not going to come out and stand up and you know what I'm saying, in a boxing match and say, go ahead, I dare you to hit me. That's kind of what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? That's not the way to do it. Even if you look at George Washington and Ben Franklin, I mean, they were pretty smart. They cheated too to win. You know what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, we have pure motives, and we're trying to get back to a constitutional government. Freedoms, individual freedoms and liberties, due process, respect for private property, property rights, that type of thing, religious freedom and stuff. But just look at Obama. You think Obama's got what he's wanted and advanced his agenda by being honest? No, he's cheated. He's done it behind our backs. So what I'm saying is, those folks who showed up in Oregon should have used their head and indirect attack. And you know what I'm saying? I don't know if cheating's the right word. I don't know, but you understand what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and and that was the worst state they could have possibly chosen to do what they did, because the lack of the bond system, I don't think they looked at the legal system of Oregon. It is different than any other state that I have ever looked at. Mm-hmm. So, I've invited several other people to this roundtable live stream. Nobody's calling in, which is kind of pissing me off. It's like, do you people not have a voice, or are you just freaking scared, or what? I don't know. But anyway, to get right back down to it, it's really kind of frightening that in this country, so many people are scared. I mean, I just see nothing but fear, and now I see even more fear, because everybody got to watch the result of standing up against your government. Things like Baltimore and St. Louis and all that, that was, people burning down their own neighborhood and looting their own businesses and, basically destroying their own space. It's like, it was, that was not even sort of a protest. That was a tantrum. We watched for the whole summer last year, tantrum after tantrum. We watched, and that's all it was. It was tantrums. And then we had some guys that went to a place in the middle of nowhere in which they shouldn't have, in my opinion, they should have never gone to that state. Oregon is a weird state when it comes to the law. They should have just stayed where they were, or gone to Idaho, or gone to Nevada or something. And now all of the people in the lead of this are now in solitary confinement, and one of them is dead. So they did exactly what they wanted to do. They scared the hell out of everybody.
Well, I wouldn't put it past them that they put somebody in there to talk them into doing it. This seems to me like they probably planned this out and probably embedded somebody with Bundy and all his friends and stuff and talked them into doing this. I don't know that much about it. I'm just saying it seems like look, if you do a Waco on the Bundy Ranch, if you do a Waco on Burns, Texas, you probably have people all over the country pissed off, ready to overthrow the government. But if you send somebody in there as a spy or whatever, and you get them to act stupid and get themselves thrown in jail, then you sort of diffuse the situation and you win the game and you make everybody look foolish, right? See what I'm saying about cheating?
Yeah, definitely. We have this protest, an armed protest coming up in Arizona. I think it's March 3rd. And I think that is a hugely bad idea. If you take your guns somewhere and you don't plan on just putting them to the head of somebody you want to get something done, there's no reason to take your guns anywhere. Honestly, that's just my opinion. Mm-hmm. But if you want to go protest and make a whole lot of noise, that's how that's done. And we saw what happened in Armory Park in 2008 at a protest. I think it was in Phoenix, or maybe it was. I'm not sure where it was. I can't remember now. But the police don't mess around, and they're getting worse every day. Mm-hmm. And now since the Armory Park riot, now they all have Afghanistan battle gear. Mm-hmm. So, the cooler heads must prevail kind of idea. And I understand the idea of, open protest, carrying your guns if you're in an open carry state. But, wandering up on a federal courthouse, even if you don't actually encroach into their property, like go off the sidewalk with a bunch of firearms, is probably not a good idea, because I guarantee you they will send some nutbag in there, as in COINTELPRO, agent provocateur, will go in there and start something to turn that into, the Battle of Athens kind of mentality thing going on. And I think there is a certain amount of bad idea in that Arizona protest. We do have tomorrow we'll be in Boise with the no permit open carry protest in Boise. Tomorrow we'll be, I think we'll be in LA live streaming with somebody. I'm not sure who. Yeah, we're still trying to get that sorted out from the rally and protest outside the prison where the Hammonds are being held. And then Sunday we're going to be live streaming out of Burns again. We're going back to Burns after it's all over to kind of get a gauge of what the hell's going on. Now that everybody's gone, to see how that community is dealing with all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what are we going to do, man? I get, does this not become more confusing and confounding every day?
Sure, it does. Yeah.
All right, Deacon. Well, I want to thank you for letting me interview you as a lawyer to try to pin down some of these terms that people use constantly that, I'm not sure if they even know what they mean. And we got no calls, which is kind of weird. So I'm going to continue on with my constitutional educational series. And thank you much, Deacon.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah, peace.
In the environment, how are we going to solve it? Is the best way to solve it is if we do it at the local level, at the national level, or would it make more sense if we explored it at the continental level or the global level? We determined a long time ago that the best way to deal with trade is at the global level. The General Agreements on Tariff and Trade in 1947 decided on a course that would systematically, over time, dismantle trade barriers. And they have. They brought them down very far. Not far enough, but they brought them down very far. That was done at the global level. I'd be in favor of continuing down that path of negotiating between sovereign governments to solve different problems, to create an institution, create a broader sense of identity or of North Americanness as part of an instrument to help us avoid our parochialism and solve shared problems. NAFTA was essentially a business contract aimed at dismantling trade and investment barriers and assuring all three countries that their sovereignty would not be affected by this and that they would remain independent. Now, one of the major concerns that Canada and Mexico had about NAFTA was that it might open their capital to being taken over by U.S. multinational corporations.
If you are a large corporation and you are given national treatment with any country, meaning as a corporation, even if you're a foreign corporation, which most of Canadians, Canada's primary corporations are foreign controlled these days, that you're given the rights of a citizen in that nation with the powers of a citizen. And corporate rule is pretty much free trade. But where it sits right now is that as the corporations have gained the status of citizens, they can challenge our laws. So even if municipalities, federal or provincial bodies establish laws for our country, for the best interests of our country based on our collective will, then the corporations can successfully challenge those laws and sue us for passing laws that infringe upon their investments and their trade.
And these are the provisions that allow a corporation to sue a national government if it feels it is not getting the treatment it would be entitled to under NAFTA. The first case against Canada under the investor state provisions was a suit brought by Ethel Corporation from the US that was wanting to market in Canada a gasoline additive called MMT, which is a suspected neurotoxin.
It was stated by our government that we're going to ban additives to fuel that involve methylmanganese because it's harmful to individuals neurologically and otherwise. It's been linked to attention deficit disorder and other problems. But when we passed those laws, the Ethel Group sued our country, said, how dare you pass laws that restrict our trade, and even we're doing it for the benefit of our own country.
Well, Canada, the Canadian government responded to that suit by effectively apologizing to Ethel, by paying them $13 million US in compensation, and by withdrawing the ban. So it didn't even have to go through the full adjudication process before Canada backed down.
Our country is being defined and shaped by regulatory bodies, by corporations, who have no accountability whatsoever to the Canadian people. I don't see that this harmonization, unionization is good for the Canadian people, period. Never was, never will be. It needs to stop.
Now, there have been 50 suits approximately under the investor state provisions so far. I say approximately because some of them are still secret. We don't know. There have been 19 against Canada, 17 against Mexico, and 14 against the United States. And of these, Canada has settled out of court or lost 4 cases, Mexico has lost 3 cases, and the United States has not lost any, because adjudicators are very reluctant to use this against U.S.
When Brian Mulroney proposed a free trade agreement, it was a Canadian initiative. It wasn't that popular with public opinion, but it was a major initiative which we initiated, which the U.S. President Ronald Reagan got fully behind. The free trade agreement was, perhaps one of the most dramatic of any period in our history. But there, the public attitudes changed. The public went from negative to positive, and even to this day, depends the questions you ask, but on the whole, attitudes are fairly positive towards free trade.
Free trade is not good for any nation that's involved in free trade. No nation benefits from free trade.
How would you feel about a North American Union, kind of like a European Union between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico?
I think that would
probably not work.
That would not work.
Nah, man.
That wouldn't be a good idea.
I think maybe Canada and the U.S. would be okay together. I don't think Mexico.
They shouldn't do that. Because at that point, Canada is no longer going to be Canada.
Canada has a hard enough time keeping its identity.
I'm a Canadian, so I want to stick with my country.
I just can't see...
Hello?
Area code 28. 208. You're really late to the party.
Well, shoot. You started going. I called once. Nobody answered, so I tried again.
All right, you're here in. What's up?
Oh, doing okay. I was listening to, I guess, your lawyer guy. I don't know what kind of lag time. I'm on the West Coast. This is Jenna New, by the way.
All right, yeah. I don't know. Some people start at the beginning when they come in, and I'm like, I've been on air for 5.5 hours now, so a lot of people get out of sync. So, anyway, so who dat? Where you at? What's up?
Well, I talked to you before about the mining and the EPA and the stuff the last time I called in. Of course, I don't get to see much of it. Everything's covered with snow now. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you about, a bunch of people have been coming up to me since I kind of joined the 3% talk group. And a lot of people are coming to me asking about this congressional conventions of states.
Yeah,
you heard much about that?
Yeah, I've heard there's a push for a not congressional, constitutional convention.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And that's where they get a chance to change the Constitution. That has to be stopped because, considering the way of the times that, you create a constitutional convention, it allows them to change the Constitution in any way they see fit. And that is a hugely bad idea. And, of course, any liberal is going to see that as a way to stop this. I mean,
I've seen the argument go both ways, though. Yeah. If we've got 2/3 of the states, which pretty much would take up the majority, but if we got 2/3 of the states that are corrupt enough to swing just like Mr. Obama, then we're in trouble. We're in huge trouble.
Well, yeah, corruption runs deep in our political society, and you know that. I know that. We all know that.
Yeah, I'm an anarchist myself, but I realize that not everybody is capable of ruling themselves. But I figured out how to do it pretty well. I don't pay taxes. I do taxes for other people, though, because I'm certified IRS certified tax preparer. I know how to screw them with their own laws. Yeah, I don't take jobs that require a Social Security number, and the next thing I'm going to go after is nullifying my need to have a driver's license.
Yeah, maybe I'll have you do my taxes. I'm trying to figure out how to have time to actually do it.
Oh, yeah. I've been doing it for 20 years, man. You guys have a farm, too. There's all kinds of write-offs with that.
Yeah. I do all the write-offs and all that kind of stuff. I do pretty good, but it's like, when am I going to have time to freaking sit down and just take 4 days just to get this freaking done? And I have other people wanting me to do their taxes.
Well, that's my ex-husband. He owns his own. He's a mechanic, and I still do his taxes. And at the end of the year, he don't do any bookwork all year long, and he hands me this giant box and says, "Here."
I can't read this.
Yay! That's all right. I make him pay through the nose. So, but. Anyway, my thinking is that with this constitutional convention, I know the pros and the cons. I mean, people have been showing me video this, video that, but I think that it would be better than nothing to get it started. My understanding was, though, is that they already have the 34 states signed up for this, but it's still not gone through.
Excuse me, I was hacking. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to cough, and then I had a phone call, and then it's always busy in here.
Oh yeah, I bet. I saw your little setup there. How come you don't have all your computers together?
Well, I can only smash so many computers into a space.
I gotcha. I live in a camper, and I've got 2 computers, and they're right next to each other.
I have 5 computers, and I got to spread them around a little bit.
Yeah.
This whole YouTube thing is new to me. This where I'm doing the YouTube thing was my gaming computer. It's where I flew. I'm like really into. Warbird, World War II gaming, flying the airplanes and stuff, and that's all this computer. That's all this computer used to ever do, and then I've not been doing that for the last year because I'm just too freaking busy. So and since this computer is so powerful, I'm like, well, let's just make this a video computer, and that's what I'm doing now.
Right. Oh, I'm homeschooling my son. He comes to stay with me for the week. And he set up his computer that he brought to do his schoolwork is all gaming. In fact, I had to tell him to turn it off. Okay, 3 hours school, buddy, right now.
Right. Yeah, I'm never.
But he's doing much better.
It's always quite a conundrum when I think about it. When I see these guys, they're doing these on laptops. I got a pretty good laptop, and when I try to live stream from it, my computer keeps throwing up these 101%. Crap's overheating. Stop.
Right. Yeah, I've got one of each myself, and I do find that. Well, I don't know. I can do better video editing on my laptop, but when it comes to shooting it across the internet, it definitely my desktop works a lot better. But
so anyway, back to the task at hand. Quite honestly,
right. I meant to tell you, I sent you some emails because I'm totally a news person all the time, alternative. And I sent you a few things. But if you're ever looking for stuff, you should check out my playlist. I got just about every freaking thing in there. Might come in handy for you because I've been sucking up knowledge for the last 7 years.
Yeah, me the same for about 15.
Yeah. Well, no, you sound about the same age as me, so.
How old are you?
Pushing 50.
Oh, well, see, there we go. I'm a little over, so.
Yeah, there we go.
But anyway.
Yeah, I think it was our generation was supposed to do something about this shit because heaven knows our parents didn't. All they did was go around and burn the raws.
Yeah, I have always said what happened in the 60s is they dropped the ball and and then they left it to us, our generation, because we are the last generation. as far as I'm concerned. We're the last generation with any knowledge about this, about anybody 10, 15, 20 years old, younger than me. Is absolutely clueless. They don't even care.
I was gonna say, it seems like there's a big old spot in, like, say, the 30s to mid 40s. You know what I mean? But then again, you've got people like us to have kids, and we taught our kids the right thing. So then you've got, like, say, the teens and the 20-year-olds right now that are actually getting some sort of an education from, us. Which is the way it should be.
Oh, yeah, my daughter says, my daughter grew up with me, so she annoys her friends on a very regular basis because she basically says what she's learned.
Right.
Being my kid, there are very few people her age that get it at all. She
really?
She brings her.
Funny.
She
How
brings
old's your daughter?
She's just coming up on 21.
Okay, mine's just getting ready to be 23. But she's got a whole gang of kids. I mean, they invite me to their parties and stuff like that. She's got this whole tribe. And every single person in that tribe is already prepping because I said so. I mean, I told them, I said, okay, give me out this task. You like to do this, go get everything you need to do that. You like to do that, go get everything you need to do that. Because that would be how you would contribute to any kind of community, survival or not, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. Her friends come over and, I start, and I start teaching them, and their eyes light up when they start figuring this out. It's amazing how when you start working with the young ones, they really want to learn this. They just didn't know it existed. Stand by a minute. We have another caller, area code 918. You're on the air. 28. Just drop anchor and stick with us.
Hey, man. This is Tinfoil Hat Orchestra.
What's up?
How y'all doing tonight?
Well, I don't know. How are you doing tonight?
Well, I had to interject in your conversation. You said they dropped the ball in the 60s. I disagree. Our generation dropped the ball in the 90s and was supposed to wake up. This is when we should have had the constitutional resolutions and this groundswell. But instead, in 95, basically the heart was ripped out of the patriotism with Oklahoma City. Since then, it's just been a continuation of government usurpation of our God-given rights, and I don't see an end in sight without the equivalent of an Ivy Belong, if not nationally, globally.
Well, I don't think it started there. I think it started a long time before that. My parents were hippies. They were all doing all this protesting stuff, but back in the 60s, the Woodstock, all that kind of stuff. That's what I'm talking about.
Mine too. Yeah, mine too.
Well, my mom as well. My dad, though, was Navy. So I had that dichotomy in my house of hardcore, right-wing military conservatives with the absolutely wacko, burn the bra, be wearing doors listening mom.
But what I'm trying to say is, maybe not drop the ball, but just got new priorities came into play because a lot of those people started, they started having kids, they had to start getting jobs, and they had to start moving into mainstream society. So that's what I'm calling dropping the ball. I'm not talking about the Weather Underground and all those people. Those people have not stopped. They never dropped the ball. And they have continued through Obama and all these people to continue to take this country into its own demise.
Well, yeah, we had that during the Clinton administration. We had the Weather Underground people actually as part of the administration. I remember that was alternative media back in the day.
Right, exactly. So, maybe you misunderstood what I was trying to say. The problem is the people that are actually doing good had no choice but to drop the ball, but the people that were doing bad continued on because they were well funded. I mean,
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, how the hell do we have a bunch of guys in solitary confinement over occupying a refuge? One guy dead via murder, via political prisoner, via political murder, but yet we can go back just not that many years and we see people that Obama finds as friends blowing up federal buildings, blowing up cop houses, blowing up all this stuff, and yet they're all free as hell and are best buddies with the president that we have in the United States. I do not understand why people don't freaking get that, and I had to curb my language because I really wanted to use the other word.
Well, think about it. Hillary Clinton was a bra burner, wasn't she? Scary.
Well, again, I consider Hillary, if she were indeed to be elected, if indeed we make it to the elections, would be the end of this country within a matter of months.
Well, yeah, for that matter, Hillary was fired in the Watergate trials because of her lying.
Right.
Right. I don't know any woman, that is okay with that many people, that many children being killed and the bombings that have been going on over there and laugh about it and laugh about the demise of anybody. That woman does not need to be our president.
No.
She needs to be in prison. From everything that we have seen over the last few months, if that had happened in the 70s or the 60s, she would already be in prison. I am completely dumbfounded by the fact she is not in prison, and I'm completely dumbfounded by the fact she's actually able to still run for president. I mean, really?
Well, shoot. And they're gonna let Cruz run, and constitutionally he can't. And you've got Obama there that lied for 8 years straight, and then you had Bush before that, and Bush before that. Both of those guys need to be in prison for sure. Well,
let's talk about Cruz let's talk about Cruz for a minute. I had Deacon on here, lawyer, a minute ago, and we were talking about setting a precedent. Well, Obama already set the precedent, so you can't stop Cruz.
All right.
We have a sitting president that is not actually an American citizen,
born.
Right?
Yeah.
So, how can we stop Cruz? I don't like Cruz. I don't like him at all. And
I don't either, and I'm from Texas.
Yeah, and Cruz is now getting behind this rancher thing, which just shows how desperate he is.
Right.
And it's like, it's kind of freaky that I have no choice. I have been forced into, because I have no other choice but to vote for Trump. I have no other choice. I have no other choice in the world right now.
Well, sure you do.
Because
everybody else. You go in there and you write in your own name, just like Gerald Celente.
Well, I write in my own name. That's going to help a whole bunch. I guess I could write in no
confidence. Well, it doesn't go towards anybody.
Well, voting if you go vote to nobody, it's the same as just not voting.
Right.
So,
Well, yeah, but going and voting is just like not voting. Really, if you think about it.
But, Trump's a showman, and he's always been a showman. But, would Trump actually do any good? I mean, he is so far outside of the circle. Is that
what we need? He funded half that circle. That's the thing. That's what the big deal is all about. But the thing is, if you're going to have an ass for a president, and you've got two sides of that, two cheeks on that ass, at least Trump is an asshole that speaks truth, as compared to the other ones that don't. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, at least he's a big mouth. I mean, it'd be the same as voting for me.
It'd be like having Pete Santilli for president, huh?
You know, voting for Trump is kind of like voting for me. I'm just a big mouth. I have absolutely no control.
You know how I vote? I vote with my dollar. Nobody gets any of it unless, you know what I mean? Nobody gets any of it.
Yeah,
I have complete control on my money.
Yeah, and I keep saying that. You know, grow your own food. That's how you vote with your dollar. If you're not feeding the beast and you're growing your own food, storing your own food, canning your own food,
buying locally,
and not feeding the beast, the corporate food beast, that's the best place to start. That's the best place you can possibly start.
Well, that's the way I've been living my life for the last 7 years. So, I mean, I'm doing what I can that I know that works. What works is leading by example. I could sit there and tell everybody till I'm blue in the face, but if they don't see me actually doing it, then I'm not doing anything better than the president, right? So I live this way. And it's not the easiest. It's not for everyone. I mean, I need a haircut. But you know, I do it because this is my way. And if I believe totally in an anarchical system where I am self-sufficient and sovereign, well, I'm going to do it now. I don't need to file paperwork to do so. You know what I mean? I don't need to impress anybody to do so. I just do it.
Right. All right, and again, 702-605-4277. Tinfoil hat.
I gotta take off, Hawk, okay?
Hey,
I'm
no
running out
problem.
of minutes on my phone.
No problem.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. You have a good
Y'all
night.
take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I'm standing here in the middle of 20 acres listening to the coyotes howl. I need to get back to work myself, but let me leave you with this little thought. The biggest concern about the recent ground swell of patriotic feelings and movement, which I'm quite pleased with, if they kick off this trap in Syria and Turkey, it will be ground into dust with the iron boot of fascism. That is my greatest concern at this point.
Yeah, we have some really dangerous stuff going on over there. You know, and I gotta wonder, you know, we've all been so focused on what's going on in Oregon, and you know, even I myself forgot to keep track of what the hell is going on over there. And you know, I've been sitting listening to the shortwave. There is a, you know, Turkish national radio and a couple other radio stations in Syria. They're all reporting a massive, you know, somebody said Turkey had invaded Syria. That's 100% bullshit, but Turkey is massing on the borders. I mean, they're sitting literally on the borders with literally every war machine they have. Right. Which is, so, you know, we see a lot of saber rattling right now. And usually you don't send everything you have to the border. You know, it's like they say, don't point a gun at somebody unless you plan to use it.
Absolutely. Well, on that happy note, I'm going to get out of here and get back to work singing guitars and watching the live stream. Y'all have a grand evening. Keep your heads down and powder dry.
All right. Thanks much. Talk to you later. All right. I'm going to return back to this video. Seems like my roundtable was small, short, but informative.
That being favorable for Canadians in any way, shape, or form.
We're still under British control partially,
So we can't really.
so that wouldn't happen. Like, I
wouldn't like it anyways.
I thought they've been trying to do that for years.
Okay, you think it's a good idea? Go ahead.
Absolutely.
The World Trade Organization is the only international organization dealing with the global rules of trade between nations. Its main function is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. The result is a more prosperous, peaceful, and accountable economic world.
What's the WTO all about?
It's all about greed. It's all about Look at these kids up here. They got a sign up that says, "Don't trade our future." For these young kids in the street today, it's about their future being traded off by corporations who frankly don't give a shit what happens to them. That's what it's about. That's what people are fed up with it. They understand it.
Direct action brought these people together. Many of them on the street I've talked to have never been in a direct action before. They feel very empowered. They're starting to understand that people can be empowered and take charge of things themselves, and direct action is perfect for getting people in that role to take charge over their own lives.
I go back to the 1988 election, which was fought on the issue of free trade. And the opponents of free trade actually won the majority of the vote. The Mulroney government was elected with a minority of votes. At that time, we had a high level of participation from all sectors of society. Now, it's true that since then the issue has faded from consciousness, but I think there are moments when symbolic issues, for example, Canadian water and sovereignty over our fresh water, there still are elements that would like to get a hold of that and would like to use some of the possible leverage through NAFTA, including the proportional sharing clause, to open up the floodgates. So I think there will be moments when symbolic issues like water will come to the fore, and we will have a resurgence of interest in these issues.
From the U.S. perspective, the largest source of energy imports by far is from Canada and Mexico. Roughly 1/3 of our total energy imports come from our two neighbors.
Proportional sharing clause is very important because it's unique to all international trade agreements that I have ever studied. It effectively makes Canada an energy colony. What the clause says is if Canada were to take measures to conserve some of our non-renewable hydrocarbons, natural gas and petroleum, if we take those measures, we still have to export to the United States the same proportion of our oil or gas exports that were sold over the previous 3 years. What if Canada wanted to preserve 10% of our petroleum production for future generations and for conservation purposes? Well, when you work through the numbers and you find that we're obliged to sell the U.S. 2/3 of the petroleum we produce, the effect of applying the proportional sharing clause could actually mean there would be shortages to meet the needs of Canada.
Canada is a great multicultural, multilateral country. We need Canada's leadership and ingenuity to develop new commissions or organizations whose purpose is to graft a North American vision onto the landscape and push forward for North American policies and institutions as well. So I hope that Canada sees within itself the capacity to have a big effect and to take the lead. And if it took the lead and worked closely with Mexico, my guess is the United States would be very agreeable to that.
They don't really need the money. As you can see, housing is natural materials. The fruits, all of this they have farming, they have hunting, they have everything they need to live and more. But then they get the progress arriving to these towns, power lines, running water, and these are services that you need to pay for. You cannot pay with a bag of corn, you need to pay with cash. So they start needing the money, getting in the capitalism system, and that's when poverty arrives to these towns. You know, they need the money. Okay, I have some money, I buy a radio and a TV, I see what's on TV, it's pure marketing. Things that they didn't need for over 2,000 years, in a decade they start needing.
Pues bueno, el Tratado de Libre Comercio, como tú sabes, no todos estamos realmente informados como se debe. O sea, lo único que nos afecta es en la desinformación.
Hey Terry, what's up? You're late to you're really late to the party.
Well, you know I don't get home until 10:30.
You were catching my attention in the middle of it, but You have my contact. All you had to do was call.
Well, yeah, I should have. I'm sorry. I'm okay. I just got home, got something to eat. Dog's going potty. I can talk now.
All right, there you go. Dogs going potty. That's the most important thing.
Round two. Yeah.
Especially when it's outside that the dog's going potty.
Yes. They wait till I get home and then it's on. You know.
Have you caught any of the? I don't imagine you've caught much of the show, right?
No, I know that you're talking about what's been going on, but you know, Sunday, you know, I sat there and read the preamble, and then I read the 10 bills of the amendments.
Yeah, preamble, articles, and then the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize there's 3 entirely, completely different parts of the Constitution. So.
Well, I read them all on my show on Sunday. And
wow,
my show did not go the way I wanted it to, because I wanted to kind of stay on topic, and then I just got lost with everybody else that come on, so.
You know, that seems to be how it goes sometimes, you know, especially when you get Lunar Girdle Springs get in there. So.
Yeah, we know.
So, there seems to be an incredible loss of understanding as to what's really going on in our country.
We've been saying it for years here at the station.
And
we've been watching it, and we've been telling everybody.
Well, the thing that is so annoying, I accidentally, I don't know, was it a Freudian slip? I accidentally did a management meeting on air.
Cute.
Yeah, it may have been a Freudian slip. I don't know. I didn't do it on purpose, but I'm not sure I did it. Because, you know, I'm really kind of tired. You know, we're getting a bad rep over here.
We are. And you know what's going on to me right now?
What?
Flat Earth.
Well, what?
We've been trying to get your attention for the past half hour or so.
Oh my God, are you serious?
I'm serious.
Hold on. All right, that solves that problem. I just went and hung up on him. Flat Earth, seriously, as many times have I said, stop that shit? Are you still there? Hello? Hello? Terry, are you muted? Alright, my audio's still working. Okay.
Did you lose me?
Yeah, you just went silent. I went.
I'm sorry.
I went and hung up on him. All right. Well, that actually solves the problem we were talking about earlier. So that show's over.
That's his protege.
Well, you know, I was asking about Ott before earlier in the management meeting. And it's like, is this a show we want to carry? I don't know. I don't listen to everybody's show.
Right.
And, you know, if they're over there talking about flat Earth, give me a break. You know, that's a Muslim concept that moved out of the Middle East and into the Catholics, and then the Catholics promoted that crap for I don't know how long.
Right.
Until they couldn't promote it anymore because it was just obviously a bunch of bullshit.
Yep. But anyway, getting back to what we were talking about, you and I both went through high school, and we both had to take econ, and we had to take government.
Yep. And I had to take a class called Current Events.
Yep, I had to take current events, and I had to take civics also.
Yeah, in which you learn how to read the news and interpret the news and all that kind of stuff.
And
what the hell? You know, what the hell happened to those classes?
And I in my 12th grade of high school, we were also given the opportunity to take elective classes, and we were able to take a law class where we learned about tort and some other laws. And it was really interesting to go through that and see where the judiciary part of government works and how, that kind of thing. So, yeah, they don't do that. Do they do that anymore in high school? I don't know.
No, they don't. I just had a child just finished high school. In fact, she tried to quit literally in her last month. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it was like she tried to quit school in the last month. It's like, okay, you went this far. You can get through a freaking month and get your freaking diploma, so at least when you go somewhere with a job, they don't think you quit at the last moment. But anyway, what I did. Here's what I did. I got skipped over a grade when I was in the 4th grade and jumped from the 4th grade to the 6th grade. And then I really hated school. It got more and more boring the longer I went through school. So when I got into high school and got an understanding of the credit system, you have to have credits to graduate. So I was going to a high school that, although the normal class range was 8 to 3.
Right.
But there were other classes that you could take from 7 in the morning, and there was another class you could take it at 3, after the normal days. So you could go get those credits.
Right.
So what I did is, when I hit high school, what I did is I would take my book and I would go through the whole book and read the whole book, and there was all these quizzes that went in, and I would go in and do all the quizzes and to every class that I was in and turn them in within a week or two at the beginning of class. And I would take the early class and I would take the late class, and because I hated school.
Right.
So I figured the best way to do that was not to just quit, but just to get it over with.
Right.
So I credited it out at just less than my 16th birthday.
Cool.
And, so I got all my credit. And here's the funny thing. After I get done with that, I went to Indiana University, got my associate's degree in theology and psychology. And when I got done with that first 2 years, I got to go to my high school graduation commencement.
There you go.
So, it's just.
Well, here I was. I ended up. Well, I was a kid having a kid, so I quit school. But I promised my father I would get my diploma come hell or high water, and I went back to school and I got my diploma, and then I did. 4 semesters of college, and then I family life, raising the kids, and hadn't become a single mom and worked. So
right.
I just never went back.
Well, people may think I'm like super smart because I got out of high school early, but I literally had to add 3 extra English classes to my repertoire every day for 2 years in order to get through it. So, and if you don't believe that, look at my typing.
Oh, we all talk hockey's here, so we know what you're saying.
Yeah, most of you have been around here for long enough to understand hawk speak, so.
Sometimes there's moments when I have to sit and think about it for a minute, but usually I figure it out.
Well, I'm a math guy, not a spelling guy, so. I hate grammar Nazis because it's like, oh God, give me a break. And surely you get the idea. Right. But anyway, let's get back on topic.
Yes, I think this is gone to hell in a handbasket. And the 8 years that who's in office, as you said, he's written more than the last 3 presidents. The pen in hand, they're jotting his executive orders, and it's.
You remember when he got elected? I put together that station promotion that went, liar, liar. I lost it. I cannot find that. I know I made it.
I might have it on my other computer. I'll go look.
Please, if you have it, please send it to me because I lost it.
I may have it on the other computer. I unplugged my other computer and kind of got it over in the computer in the corner. I've got to get my pictures and stuff off of it. In my music, it's probably in there. It's probably archived under there. I'll find it.
That would be awesome if we could find it because I lost everything when they took out my YouTube channel.
Oh my gosh, Hawk! I think I've got about 4 or 5 folders of bumpers and stuff. I'll see what I got.
Cool.
And I'll just send them over to you.
Because, I put together this station promo from some movie about, Obama was speaking and went, liar! You liar! Liar! It was a really great promo, and I ran it for a while, and then, I turned it off and went to another promo, and then I don't know where it went, but it just evaporated from my computer, so...
I'm pretty sure it's on my other computer. I've got to get it plugged in anyway, so I'll look. I know I've got all your albums on that computer too, and I got to get it off there and put it on this one.
All right,
but anyway, getting back to the whole thing, and the whole thing with Bundy's, and then with the Hammonds, and now Burns. It's just. I have got so many friends that are going, so when's the Civil War? When's the revolution going to happen? I said, it's happening. Wake up.
Well, there's a big difference between waking up and getting out of bed, right?
Well, right, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I've been saying that all day. Everybody's talking about, I'm woke up. Okay, well, you're woke up. Get out of bed.
Do something. Yeah.
Get out of bed.
Use your voice. And like I said on Sunday, if nothing else, you can use a pen and paper too. You can use a phone and call. You don't need to just sit on your duff and do nothing.
Right. Go to these rallies.
Yep. Open your mouth and speak.
Yep. Pretty much. Not pretty much. Exactly.
But do you see, is it a generational thing with Hawk? Is it because we're older and we know where we've come from and what it was all about? Because I know both my grandfathers were when it was in World War II. I don't know if it's a generational thing or not. I know that there's some of the young ones that are, for lack of a better word, awake, but they didn't have what we had. Do I make sense?
Well, I mean, there's the definition of awake. I mean, the older generations, they were awake in a different way. They came up, a lot of them in the Depression, so
right.
It really had nothing to do with being awake. It just had to do with self-preservation.
Right. Well, you and I both come from farmer stock too, so we're in a little bit of a different realm than some people.
Yeah. But
we were the original preppers. I mean, for gosh sakes.
Yeah, and when you really think about it, it wasn't prepping. It was just like getting ready for winter.
Right. Exactly. You had to have enough in store till the next harvest was in. So
yeah, when my Aunt Mary passed away, they went down into the basement and they had stuff going. She passed away in, I think, 2002. They went down in the basement, and I was like so upset because she had stuff going back that was perfectly good, canned, going back to 1970s.
Yep.
Well, I wasn't even worried about the food in the jars. It was the fact they destroyed the jars.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of jars got pushed out to the end of the curb.
The older homestead that I moved into before I got this place, she had, and the food was still good, a whole pantry full of canned goods, green beans, you name it, it was in there, even canned meats. And I just the ones that looked bad, I opened up and got rid of, but I washed them jars out. I was going to use them again. No sense smashing up something that's perfectly good to use again.
Yeah, if the jar lip is good, the jar lip is good. I don't think I would eat green beans right now from 1973, but still, the jar's good.
Well, she had stuff dating back to, I believe, It was the late 80s, so 87 or 88.
Right.
Still in there. Excuse me.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I mean, us, you know, the people out here on the farms and all that kind of stuff, we don't call it prepping. We just call it, you know, winter is coming.
Right, winter's coming, and we got to put the stuff up, so we got it.
and not wasting food.
Right.
You know, it's like you can eat so much, and then you put away the rest, and eat it whenever, and you know, you end up.
Always nice to open up a nice jar of peaches in the dead of winter.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. So, you know, that's kind of the gist of that. All right, Terry, thanks for calling in. I'm going to drop out of here. I'm getting ready to eat me some dinner and finish up this United We Fall film and get the hell out of here.
All right, you have a good night, honey.
You too. Good night.
Bye.
No todos tenemos también la capacidad de admitir el libre comercio.
Y nada nos ha beneficiado el libre comercio. La verdad, estamos igual o peor ahorita con esta crisis que tenemos. Realmente es difícil la situación.
Creo que siento que el producto mexicano va y con un precio bajo y regresa con un precio más caro y se afecta porque pues lo que puede ser México consumir y nosotros consumir nuestro producto tenemos que mandarlo para allá.
Nunca hemos visto nada que nos ayude, que nos apoye, nada. Es nada más para los que tienen dinero, el pobre nunca.
How has the experience in Mexico been in terms of NAFTA since it started 15 years ago?
Ha sido una situación positiva, ha mejorado realmente el comercio entre los tres países. Sin embargo, lo que sí te puedo decir que hubo ciertos acuerdos dentro del mismo, nosotros le llamamos TLC o Telecam, que no se cumplieron como es la situación del transporte, que es por eso que ahorita volvieron a gravar, o sea, hay que pagar impuestos por algunos productos norteamericanos.
No estamos informados al 100% de qué se trata el libre comercio. O sea, si a nosotros nos informaran como comerciantes qué vínculo nosotros tendríamos con el Tratado de Libre Comercio, sabríamos realmente de qué se trata o qué lo compone al 100%. Pero como no tenemos ese tipo de información, es muy difícil que todo, en concreto, expresemos en qué nos beneficia y en qué no.
Given the similarities of our two economies, of our two cultures and our countries, it seemed to me doable to achieve, to pursue what I've always referred to as a kind of common economic space, a single economic space, where the border becomes irrelevant. I think Mexico could become part of it, as indeed NAFTA was modeled after the Canada-US agreement. And as the Europeans, as you will know from the whole history of the European community, remarkable achievements they've had, it's all been incremental over the years at different speeds.
They've been doing it incrementally for years. The European Union was initially started with an agreement in the 1950s to regulate the production of steel among all the European countries. And the argument then was that you would hate to have a country like Germany corner the market on steel and develop an empire that would attack the rest of Europe again. So they had a reason based on recent history at the time, which said we need to have an agreement that regulates production of steel across Europe, and from there they built on it with subsequent agreements.
The road to North American Union is not a new development. Probably it kicked into high gear in about 1965 with the creation of the Council on the Americas, and David Rockefeller was the founder of that. And there was a meeting down in Central America between, it would have been then Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson and Lyndon Johnson, and they discussed all of these things that we're seeing now. They discussed creation of one North American market, one North American currency.
There's a distinction between a customs union and a monetary union. A customs union is a common external tariff. It's a logical extension of a free trade agreement and basically says that the tariffs that all three countries have with the outside world will be the same. Right now they're different. Theoretically, we have no tariffs between our countries, but on the perimeter of our countries, we utilize different tariffs. That proves to be extremely inefficient and costly for our own commerce, because everything has to stop at our regular borders to see what amount of the content was made in North America and what was outside. So it's a self-defeating proposition. It would be far better if we could come up with a way to eliminate what's called rules of origin, have a common external tariff, which is called a customs union. Completely different from that is a monetary union with a single currency. That is a very complicated task. The Europeans had been struggling with it for over 30 years, and they tried and failed through a variety of different techniques before they finally, in 1999, implemented the euro.
1999, when the euro was created, because of my background, I thought that the same arguments that made the euro such an attractive innovation, that the people actually went with it.
Let's make one last try.
I'm sorry, but the person you called. I'm sorry, but the person you...
Purely on economic terms, also would apply to North America. And I had this idea of writing a paper in which I outlined what would be the benefits to Mexico, Canada, and the United States for creating the equivalent of the euro. And I had the idea, the inspiration to call it the Amero.
I think one thing people who are dollar-based need to focus on is the Amero. That's the one thing that nobody's talking about that I think is going to have a big impact on everybody's life in Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. If you Google it, you'll find out all about it.
Well, you could tell us a little bit more right now.
You always hear it on CNBC, don't you? The Amero is the proposed new currency for the North American community, which is being developed right now between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico to make a borderless community, much like the EU, and the dollar, Canadian dollar, U.S. dollar, and the Mexican peso replaced by the Amero.
You really think that will get any leeway?
You may want to visit a couple of websites and see how far along it is. The Canadians are pretty upset about it, whereas the Americans, apart from the Texans, are the only people who know anything about it. The rest of the public's really sort of with their head in the sand on this one.
There is a group of people out there who believe that there exists a conspiracy to deprive the United States and Mexico, and that's where the center of these conspiracy theorists is. They are worried that there was a conspiracy to rob the two countries of their national sovereignty and through the back door bring in socialism and various other kinds of things. This is, of course, nonsense. It's a little bit like the story about Kennedy's assassination. People still don't believe that Oswald did it. There's a whole industry out there. There's a quarter of all Americans or something like this still think that Elvis Presley lives. I would put the stories that these guys are manufacturing essentially into that category. I cannot deal with it. I am not following it. I hear about it because, as far as I'm concerned, it is just a conspiracy theory. The idea that I am associated with and that I'd like to push is that there are clear economic benefits from having a common currency. The basic economic argument in favor of a common currency is that you have lower transactions costs for firms that are exporting, importing, making investments, and secondly, that the cost of borrowing that is highly correlated with the cost that has to be paid by the federal government, cost of borrowing by other jurisdictions, corporations, consumers, mortgages, they all would be lowered to the benefit of Canada.
In 1974, as a condition of joining at the time this G7, this group of 7, which became the G8, which is now the group of 20, this was following something called the Milton Friedman School of Business in Chicago. And they thought, well, it's better to give the banking industry of countries to the private markets and let it be handled there and go with the ebb and flow. But as a condition of being a part of these groups, nations have to give up the control of issuing themselves their own credit, of loaning to themselves. And because we chose to do this, because we thought being part of this group of 7 or group of 8, now G20, was a good thing for Canada, we stopped using our Bank of Canada to fund our infrastructure. We don't borrow from ourselves anymore. We borrow from the private banking cartel.
The outcome should be clear. On a board that determines what the interest rate would be for North American Amero area, would have to give greater power to the country that represents 70% of the entire economic activity and financial power, the United States, and only, let's say, 15% for Mexico at the moment and 15% for Canada. The most important thing about this kind of a central bank is that the politicians have to stay out of it completely. Central banks should be removed from the control, the clutches of politicians, should be given a constitution which says, thou shalt only be responsible for price stability. Politicians still play a role because they have to appoint the people to the boards which determine the day-to-day policies which in the end are supposed to have the outcome of price stability.
To give up this right to lend to ourselves is absurd, because what has happened? We've gone from an $18 billion deficit to up to a $588 billion deficit, of which about 95% of that is compound interest. And money, we're paying interest to who? Well, there's no person out there who has a Canadian flag, who lives in Canada, who we pay $60 billion in interest, both federally, provincially, and at the municipal levels too. We're paying someone else interest on the money that we can print and produce ourselves and lend it to ourselves to fund our infrastructure, to fund our social programs, to fund our education for our university students who are also being put in a debt trap. But as you give up control of your currency, and William Lyon Mackenzie King said it most poignantly when he said this. He said, you know, the issuance of the credit and currency is the state's most precious resource. And once you give up that control, it matters not who makes the laws of the land, because usury, once in control, will wreak havoc on any nation.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the Federal Reserve. As I said once before, this is the very institution that is highly responsible for bankrupting America and essentially enslaving the world under a perpetual debt system. It's by no way federal, and there are certainly no reserves.
What's your full name?
What's that?
What's your full name?
Is there any reason why you need my full name?
I'm just asking what's your name. What's your partner's name?
Well, you can ask him.
Hey, boss. What's your name?
It's essentially the centralization of power into fewer hands. That's what's going on. Canadians, Americans, and Mexicans will lose their sovereignty, their right to govern themselves as an individual nation. And the economies of all three of the nations will be merged into fewer and fewer hands. I can see an obvious, clear problem with that. The moment that power gets diverted into fewer hands, you got to be concerned.
We have a lot of people here still who believe that having a picture of the Queen is a wonderful thing. and that it is a symbol of nationhood. It is a slippery slope of losing the Canadian national identity by having on our day-to-day, every day we're looking at coins and bills, and there we see George Washington, rather than the Queen or another symbol of Canada. And that sort of pervades society and reduces national sovereignty.
It is the merger of the United States, Mexico, and Canada into one super country. It's like NAFTA on steroids, and it's about bringing all three countries together into one country, joining our governments, our currencies, our military. I had the pleasure of interviewing former President of Mexico, Vicente Fox, and he said himself there will be a North American Union.
Can you please talk about how you, as President of Mexico, President Bush, and the Prime Minister of Canada established working groups towards a North American Union?
There is the original document, the original commitment, and there is supposed to be follow-up procedures. There is supposed to be committees to discuss and to advance, but that's not happening.
Will there be a North American Union? Do you believe there will be a North
I would hope so. I think it would be very convenient for both of us.
When Vicente Fox in the 1990s was a candidate for presidency of Mexico, I was at a conference and I sat next to him at dinner, and on the other side of Fox was Robert Mundell, whom I mentioned already as the father of the European Monetary Union. And we impressed him, obviously, with the idea that there would be great benefits for Mexican economy from this. He had no difficulty accepting it because he was a successful businessman before he became a politician. He was the president of Coca-Cola Mexico. So when he was elected, he went on a courtesy visit to the White House. And the press release at that time said that he raised with President Clinton the idea that we should push forward on a North American monetary union. It was said that he did the same thing when he got to Ottawa and talked to Chrétien. We have had opinion surveys which showed that the idea of a common currency with the Americans and Canadians is totally unacceptable to Mexicans for nationalistic reasons. They want to maintain Mexico as a clear, identifiable nation and culture. And for some reason, word has spread amongst them that this is the first step towards absorption by the Americans.
So you say you've heard about the Amero currency?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you hear about it?
I read in the newspaper 2 months ago. Yes.
Yeah.
For the Amero, like in Mexican people, is why is my peso is. I don't want another currency.
Mm-hmm.
I am Mexican. I like my peso.
Yeah.
I don't need new currency.
Sí, era una moneda que iban a crear. Era bien, ¿no? Para apoyar a la economía de México. Pues no, lo que había escuchado últimamente que se iba a tratar de estabilizar la economía y se iba a manejar solamente un solo capital, que es los comentarios que dicen para que esto se estabilice y tenga una estabilidad, pero eso lo escuchaba que iba a ser dentro de 5 o 6, hasta creo que dentro de 10 años más, menos que no sé ahorita si anda funcionando eso.
And this whole new world order ideation is a bunch of banking and intellectual elites that basically see the same sort of mentality. Control the economy, control the issuance of currency, you control the nation. And now control the food, you control the people. Let me control the issuance of currency and credit of the nations. I don't care who you put in power, because they know control the money, you control the nation. And society, we're not aware of this. But this is all part of this whole globalization scheme that's happening right now.
Even to raise those kinds of issuers, to raise the Amero currency issue, is to inflame a lot of the people who are most fearful about integration. So for those reasons, I say leave them aside. We have some preliminary steps before we get to a point where we can seriously entertain that. The trouble with the monetary union is that there's tremendous symbolic attachment to our currencies. Although if you step back, you would say certainly the Greek drachma or the French franc or the German Deutschmark or the Spanish peso would be far more delicate and important to those countries because in some of those countries they've used the same currency for thousands of years, whereas we haven't even existed for 300 years in North America. So if they were ever able to overcome their fear of losing this distinctive cultural item defining their country like Greece for 3,000 years, certainly it shouldn't be that hard for Canadian or Americans or even the Mexicans to contemplate a different currency. I happen to believe that it would be beneficial to our three countries to begin studying this issue seriously, because it is not a simple step to go from a national currency to a unified currency. It is very hard. And the European experience shows that countries have got to find a way to consult on macroeconomic policy, on budgets and deficits and debts, and establish indicators that would reduce the distortion between economies before you even take the first step toward a common currency. I believe the American people, the Canadians, the Mexicans are practical people. You have to make a convincing case that moving towards the unified currency will be demonstrably better for their standard of living than under the current system right now. We should proceed by letting the academics study this for us. Think about it as much as possible. Help us to understand what the hazards and the benefits are before the people calculate whether it's in their benefit or not.
Well, of course, he'll also give you the line that he never ever talked about a North American union, that he's always advocated a North American community. But if you read what he has to say, what he envisages is this North American community would be organized. He would have basically three very powerful institutions that would basically correspond with a judicial and a legislative branch and an executive type branch, which would the executive branch would steer the agenda for the three countries, Canada, the US, and Mexico. You would have essentially a North American parliament to mirror the three separate independent legislative bodies in the three countries, and then you would have a North American court which would adjudicate on disputes, etc. Well, that sounds an awful lot like a North American union to me. He can call it a community if he wants it, but now we're just parsing terms. Silly semantics.
It's important to know when you're talking about this subject that nobody here is talking about a political union. They're talking about economic and political arrangements which deepen integration and the relationship, but in which the countries, as in Europe itself, maintain their sovereignty.
We're talking about the virtual destruction of a sovereign nation. Three sovereign nations, the end of a constitution. Sovereign nations can be an obstacle to the free flow of money and goods and labor. And if they can erase national boundaries, obviously that would maximize their efficiencies and their profits. But at what cost? I mean, only the nation state is best equipped to safeguard our individual inalienable rights.
How's your experience been in the European Union over there?
It's rubbish, a lot of rubbish, the EU.
The issues that most people face is employment. We have a large immigration population coming over, and so the UK at the moment in recession are quite worried about losing their jobs, but other than that, it gives you opportunities that you wouldn't normally get, and travel as well is good.
I mean, from a business point of view, it makes business more effective. You know, you don't have to worry about exchange rates and things like that. But it just seems so remote and far away. I mean, it's over in Strasbourg in France, and we don't really get to hear much about what goes on there. You know, you vote once every 4 years, and then it doesn't seem to change much.
Everything is more complicated and bureaucratic, and you got all these like strange laws that maybe apply in France, for example, that in Scotland they're completely irrelevant, and it just makes life more difficult.
It's a process of harmonization, because you have different social systems, different currency, different quality of life, and I think it takes, in this case, maybe 40 years if you have a democratic process.
Sovereignty as a concept was born in Europe. It was created in Europe. They created the nation state. The Europeans invented it. And through the colonial empire, they went globally, and then they passed the sovereignty notion on to the rest of the world. The Europeans have thrown sovereignty out the window.
Well, the Canadian Council of Chief Executives is an organization whose members essentially are the 150 CEOs of Canada's largest corporations. I think we've seen the concept of national sovereignty eroded in a whole variety of ways. And while it's an important concept, you know, it's compromised by the Geneva Convention. It's compromised by every treaty that any country enters into. It's compromised by the Charter of the United Nations. It's compromised by the human rights laws. So we, you know, I think we need to be a little bit mature about the concept of sovereignty. I find it amusing when people put sovereignty as in a kind of crystal jar and say, well, this is the ultimate. Sovereignty is the ability of a country to act in its own best interests in accordance with international law and its commitments to other countries. Because really, national sovereignty is one of the tools that we use in order to give democratic expression, because we've got to break things down into a more manageable size. But at the same time, it's a concept to be exercised with a certain amount of care.
Sovereignty is changed so greatly because of the phenomenon of globalization, where all issues become transnational, whether it's trade, the environment, health, it's all transnational. And so sovereignty has to be understood in a very different way. And at the heart of sovereignty, you have the absolute requirement for deep international cooperation. See, the UN was the first great body that sacrificed, tossed sovereignty out the window.
You can't simply agree to every international agreement just because people say we live in a global system now. We live in an international society now. You have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. The people appointed to head these international groups are appointed by bankers, financiers, and multinational corporations, and not by people with any direct link to the people. So they're not appointed by your elected officials, they're appointed by the groups they're supposed to regulate. The idea of accepting a world that is truly global now, a world where we are interdependent, without looking at the root causes of that interdependence, and without looking at the problems that interdependence has caused, is a mistake.
Foreign trade is the key to prosperity. Free trade will bring on a Great Depression.
Hitler had a dream that his big business should dominate the world. He called his dream the New Order. Foreign big business was weakened during the war, and today American big business is the strongest. And they have a dream to dominate the world.
This was not a natural occurrence, and just because we do live in a global interdependent world right now doesn't mean that we shouldn't take steps to mitigate that and to reduce our interdependence so we can be independent and we can independently decide what we want for our futures.
Canadians are saying no to the North American Union, no to the SPP, and yes to Canada's sovereignty.
there are people who equate sovereignty with shutting down the borders, with not collaborating with neighbors, but I think they've got it backwards. I think sovereignty means how do you strengthen the nation? How do you ensure that the people in a nation have access to health care and to food and prosperity and to security? And if that's the definition, then maybe the best way to approach that is to open it up, not to close it down.
I am a staunch Canadian nationalist because of globalism, because there are global banking and financial institutions and corporations that seek to violate countries' sovereignties by doing whatever they want to those countries with or without the permission of the people in those countries. So because of the global forces at play, because of the global banking system, because of institutions like the IMF, like the United Nations, like the World Bank, like the WTO, that wield tremendous power over nations already, we need to defend sovereignty more than ever. All other notions that violate sovereignty, including multilateral trade agreements, take away from us the ability to control what happens in our countries. And that's why sovereignty is so important. Sovereignty is where you and fellow people of that country can determine how you want to live in that country. And without sovereignty, you can't.
I hope you know who Laura Secord was. She lived on the American side of the border, and her husband was in the War of 1812, and he was wounded. So she was looking after him when a couple American soldiers busted into her house, forced her to belay them, and the American soldiers didn't know how potent our beer was, so they got a little loopy. And they started talking about their plans to invade Canada. And she overheard this, and she ran 30 kilometers, climbed the Niagara Escarpment, collapsed in front of the Indians, and told John Fitzgerald about the plan to annex Canada. And she stopped it. All the Indians, all the troops, all the settlers, everyone bound together, and we pushed back the Americans. They let It breaks my heart to think that all that she did is for nothing. Right. Only for Canada to get annexed 200 years later, and we can't let that happen. You need to get out there, you need to tell your friends, you need to tell your family, we need to stop this SPP.
To understand what's happening, we should look at what has occurred under the Security and Prosperity Partnership. That was the intergovernmental arrangement that began in 2005 when Prime Minister Paul Martin, President Vicente Fox from Mexico, and President George W. Bush met at his ranch at Waco, Texas. And they launched this partnership. The following year, they met again in Cancun, Mexico, and established what was called the North American Competitiveness Council. And this council has 30 executives, 10 from each country, who have direct access to the policy-making apparatus under the SPP.
It's the next step towards the North American Union, with one of the first bigger steps being NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. They have to do it in small stepping stones to condition the people to be able to accept such a thing. So SPP, Security and Prosperity Partnership, is another big step, which is uniting the three into one.
I think the SPP was a good idea in principle, but ultimately it failed because it was implemented in a manner that that closed it off to public scrutiny. And the only people who were invited into the room were the largest CEOs of the largest businesses in the three countries.
And each working group covers every single area of North American society, and it basically says we're going to set the rules for each area of society across North America, irrespective of what the people in the countries want.
What are your thoughts on the SPP, its penchant for secrecy and the lack of democratic process?
This is the leaders' initiative, the Security and Prosperity Partnership?
Yeah, the Security and Prosperity Partnership.
I think we elect people in broad-based democratic processes in order to govern. And when they are seeking re-election, we have the ultimate consultation and the opportunity, if we don't like what they've done, to throw them out. I don't think that democracy means that every citizen is present in every discussion, wherever and whenever it's held.
trouble.
What happened in Montebello was the people in 2007, in August, in Montebello, Quebec, were fed up with this 2.5-year-old trade deal going forward and merging every aspect of their society and harmonizing the regulations to the lowest possible standards according to what corporations want. They were sick and tired of the information not being given out to the public, not being openly shared, and of not being given any input into what was happening with respect to this massive trade deal. So they massed in Montebello what looked to be about 1,000, 1,500 protesters. There was a security perimeter around the meeting, and there was incredible police presence there. And at one point, the police were even caught infiltrating the protest by 3 giant, muscle-bound, supposedly anarchists, wearing masks and holding rocks. Were threatening to throw the rocks at the police.
No! Put the rock down, man!
A union leader stepped up and said, "Take off your masks, put down those rocks, you're not with us."
You're a fucking cop, the 3 of you! Go on, it's our line! These 3 guys are cops, everybody!
Eventually, they ripped the masks off the guys, and the guys dove behind the police line. And that was all. It was caught on tape. It was exposed. They were exposed as infiltrators because they were wearing the same boots as the officers who arrested them. Plus, of course, who dives behind a police line for protection if you're a protester? It's something that most protesters would be scared to do, to dive into a bunch of police who are there, menacingly, staring at them.
As we confirmed yesterday, the 3 people in question were indeed suited Quebec police officers performing their duties.
And what that shows is the fascist lengths which the Canadian government will go to protect the information about this trade deal.
In 2005, when you signed the Security and Prosperity Partnership, were you aware at that time of any plans to integrate the countries of Canada, US, and Mexico into a North American community similar to a European Union? And considering that the fact that there was no referendum from the people on this agreement, as a former Bilderberg attendee, could you please describe what your intentions were when you signed the SPP on behalf of the Canadian people?
Well, okay, I attended one Bilderberg meeting. I'm not sure they ever invited me back, but just to make sure, I've also gone to a Maple Leaf hockey game. That doesn't mean I'm a Maple Leaf fan.
And what exactly is the Bilderberg Group?
Well, it's a group of probably around 125 to 130 people that meet every year, heads of state, presidents, prime ministers, the heads of the Federal Reserve and Bank of Canada, and multinational corporations like British Petroleum and Coca-Cola, and heads of media, and all these really influential people who hold a lot of weight and have the ability to affect change in the world. That's who meets at the Bilderberg meetings every year. The name itself, they don't even technically have a name. Bilderberg is the name of the hotel where they first met back in 1954.
I believe the meeting was first organized by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. And they've been meeting every year since then to, I guess, stage manage as best they can world events and further control the world's resources.
So they've tried to remain secret for a long, long time, and it's only recently that the general population is starting to become aware of the Bilderberg Group. I mean, people at G8 summits, people think, well, there's a lot of power, there's a lot of influence right there to affect change, and look at the protests that show up to G8 meetings. The people at Bilderberg have way more power and influence than anyone at G8 meetings, yet there's a media blackout. So right away I have to ask myself, well, why is that? Why isn't anybody covering this? These guys are bigger than G8 guys.
In 1996 you were at a Bilderberg meeting, and also there was Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin.
I don't know if I was at that meeting. I've only been to a few of them. Bilderberg and Trello are not really think tanks. They simply individuals who get together who are from business, the political world, the media, others, and discuss ideas, and they influence each other through that.
I think the overall objectives of the Bilderberg Group have been to unite various areas of the world in order to set up the New World Order, the one world government. They're the ones who are responsible for the formation of the European Union, which really didn't happen that long ago. It was set in place maybe 8 or 9 years ago. So those are the guys who have the influence and the power, and they are the ones who are also going to be setting up the North American Union over here, and there's also going to be an Asian Union and an African Union, and those are the guys who are working to bring it together.
I don't really know what Bilderberg's position on this is, but I do understand your question. The Security and Prosperity Agenda, which was signed by Vicente Fox of Mexico, myself, and President Bush at Baylor in Texas, and you're absolutely right in that part of the question, has nothing to do with an economic union. What it really was that Fox and I both said, Fox because of immigration, me because of Mad Cow and because of softwood lumber, essentially said, look, there are a number of items which are violating the spirit of NAFTA. They're not violating the letter of NAFTA, but they're violating the spirit of NAFTA. And if effectively we're going to be able to build a strong North American economy and compete with some of the Asian powers, we've got to be able to talk outside of NAFTA. And that's what it was all about. And what we said is we've got to be able to get our business communities together. Because I felt very strongly that we were having a terrible time with Congress on softwood lumber. And I really felt that if the Canadian business community was able to deal directly with the American business community and point out some of the stuff, it would give us a bit of a leg up. I can tell you it has nothing to do with any kind of a union.
There was a meeting held in Banff between military, political leaders, private business from Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. to discuss issues surrounding North America. But the meeting was closed off to the public, kind of veiled in secrecy. What kind of stuff was discussed at this meeting regarding the future of North America?
That was the meeting that Peter Lougheed and George Shultz coordinated?
Yeah, it was the one, it was at a hotel in Banff, I believe.
Yeah, I think Peter Lougheed coordinated that from the Canadian side. I don't remember exactly. There were general discussions about issues that each country faced, and we had, as I recall, there were some fairly senior people from the U.S. that were present.
Yeah, I remember them saying Donald Rumsfeld might have been down there at that time.
No.
No, he wasn't there? Let's see, this is what happens when media was cut off from it. That's why you get misinformation, disinformation. Once you get the media out of things like this, they can't report authentic.
I can guarantee you get misinformation when the media is present also.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Why keep the media out of it? If there's so many important people there, some big decisions could be made that could help inform the public more.
But it was not a decision-making group. I mean, I was there. I'm just a lawyer from Toronto and Ottawa, so I have some experience, and I can talk knowledgeably about the issues that we face, but I'm not making any decisions. I don't hold any office. I don't buy into the conspiracy theories around meetings. I think some of that is deliberately misinformative. Do we need the media to be probing and to be asking questions? Absolutely. And there's no doubt about that. Can you have meaningful, productive meetings with the media present? Sometimes. Sometimes you don't, if the media are present, you don't have a meeting. So, you just have to, you have to do things, with a certain practicality to it.
You have three primary groups that have been working on this for some time, more pronounced since the Second World War, but there are three key groups involved, and this is the Council on Foreign Relations, or its sister arm in Canada is the Canadian Council of Chief Executives, which is about 150 executives of corporations which control over $3 trillion in assets in Canada. The Trilateral Commission, which is by and large looking for this world integration. and the Bilderberger Group, which is a group of individuals who see this whole new role for society, building this global elite of integrating all of the countries together under one global single parliamentary command. So New World Order is being sold to the populace as being something that's good for us, for our own security and our own prosperity. It's not been voted on. Public are not even aware it's going on. But it's all part of these steps of changing the laws of the land, where you have regulatory bodies and corporations dictating what happens in nations. And we end up losing our nationhood and our sovereignty, which is quite frightening.
The only prominent non-governmental sort of group that have really paid a good deal of attention to this has been the Council on Foreign Relations. And their task force did come out with an articulate, and Mr. Pastor was involved, a vision, well-argued. John Manley in Canada. It was a very distinguished group of Americans, Mexicans, and Canadians who argued for a North American community.
Well, we tried to work collectively with a broad representation from all three countries, Canada, the United States, and Mexico. We were looking at really NAFTA that many years, more than 10 years after it came into effect, saying, you know, what should be the next steps? Where can we go from here, if anywhere? And there was a broad range of views, certainly among the people that the Council on Foreign Relations asked to be part of that.
The Council did not endorse it, because the Council doesn't endorse the work of its task force, and they didn't hold any, public meetings on it. But it was, they I think, went beyond anything that has been occurred in the Trilateral or Bilderberg in analyzing the merits in this paper they produced in this task force.
I think that we struggled a lot with this basic question. I mean, do you want to be, bold and brash? Do you want to be incremental? Do you need a common view for all three countries? Can there be a common goal, but moving at different speeds? And so, we tackled a lot of those issues. We tried to make, I think, a contribution to